Hello there, YouTube! My name is Windy, but please call me Windy, and welcome back to Read With Me, the wonderful fun series where we sit down, we read, and we just relax, really, for the most part. Excuse me. I'm so sorry that this, was not going up earlier today. Today's Thursday, and it's, going up, later tonight. The upload might finish by, the end of the day or something, I don't know. Goodness, I'm so sorry. My allergies are being a butt. But, I'm so sorry about this, going up later than I intended it to. I got really, really busy yesterday, and I wasn't sick or anything, but my stomach was kind of bothering me, so I just was like, it was my stomach bothering me and I had a headache, so I was just kind of like, you know what, I'll just record tomorrow. And then basically what I like to do around this time of year, at least, is, I try to wash my bedding and stuff, as often as I can, but especially when it gets to this point and it's time to start bringing out the big blue blanket, which you see right here, that keeps me nice and warm. I like to basically take my sheets or whatever and wash all my bedding, tidy up my bed and just kind of spray it, make it nice and clean and all that stuff. And yeah, so that's what I've been doing today. And on top of that, sometimes when you get that random burst of I want to just clean a bunch, you just kind of have to take it when it comes. I was having that type of moment too, so yeah. Excuse me. So I've just been running around cleaning. I'm kind of sweaty, kind of not, so yeah, there is all that. Also, I ate not that long ago, so if I burp a bunch and stuff, I am so sorry. Anyway, not the point of today's video. No, the point of today's video is we are reading chapters 29 and 30 of War Storm. This is the fourth and final book in the Red Queen series. This is honestly one of my favorites, and whatnot, but let me tell you about chapters 27 and 28. So basically, we saw Evangeline in chapter 28, chapter 27, I'm sorry. And we kind of got to see a bit more about, not only how she feels about her situation, that she feels kind of stuck and whatnot, that she's her father's prized possession or whatever, and all that stuff, to use to be, bargained off and everything. What was it? The pet. She used the word pet. But Elaine also was kind of saying to her, there was okay, let me back up a bit. Premier Davidson, left a little note on the bed that was, a formal invitation of, you were invited to Montfort. You and Elaine, there is place for you here. You are more than welcome to come, just ask for a cup of tea. And Elaine even told Evangeline, I can't keep doing this. The whole, hiding and stuff. Because Elaine is married to, Ptolemus, Evangeline's brother. And there was a whole discussion at the table and whatnot, and then it kind of led into, Eve I'll just call her Eve, led to Eve basically kind of, not only talking about the whole, the situation of, oh, why doesn't, Elaine come us to, Accident, the capital, and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. And then during the dinner they were having, Annabelle came to them and said, Maven's gone. Because if you remember, he got teleported away from everyone else, but they're Maven's gone. And it's what? So they go with Cal, and they meet up with Julian and whatnot. And at one point, Cal's can I just speak to Evangeline in private? And Eve eventually reveals that, I think they're going to kill my father. And he was well, why would they do that? And she kind of explained her thoughts, and so we got to see that. And then in chapter 28, we saw Iris's point of view. Iris, again, is the princess of the Lakelands. She was Queen of Norda when she was with Maven. She no longer is technically Queen of Norda, as far as I can understand. But she is the princess of the Lakelands. So she is still a royal. And what it was that she sat with her mother and whatnot, and soon her sister joined them because they were waiting for her sister. But they kind of found out, hey, the spies have been saying that Maven's gone. Not dead, he's gone. Poof. And they're trying to figure out all that and everything. So we got to see a little bit of, a bit more bonding of, Tiora and Iris and Senra. Tiora and Iris' mother, the current queen of the Lakelands. So, excuse me. But that's kind of where we are so far at the moment. Let me go ahead and let's get started reading. We are on chapters 29 and 30. 29 is Mare's point of view. So we get to kind of see what happened after they kind of poofed away. Let's see what happened. Okay. Excuse me. Alrighty. Here we go. Okay. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. I'm kind of stuffed up all day. Alright. Chapter 29 with Mare. Okay. It's nightfall when we reach Ascendant, gliding through the mountains in almost pitch darkness. I try not to think about being smashed against the black slopes, but the pilots are skilled, landing our airjet on the Alpine runway with ease. The rest of Montfort's air fleet, as well as the transport convoys carrying the bulk of their army, is down on the plain. They'll have to climb the Hawkway to get to the city, or disperse along other roads and... Wait, did I say Ascendant was the capital of Norda? I am so sorry. It's Archeon. Ascendant is part of Montfort. I'm so sorry. I just realized that. Alright. They'll have to climb up the Hawkway to get to the city, or disperse along other roads and travel routes throughout Montfort to return to their posts. The country will then take up defensive positions, guarding its own borders, on the off chance the Lakelanders decide to try their might against the mountains, or prod the raiders and prairie into doing their work for them. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Farley, Davidson, their attendants, and I make the trek into the city in silence, walking the steps beneath an arc of glittering starlight. I watch the sky as we go, trying to name the constellations. I refuse to think about either Kalor brother. Not the one we left Norda, nor the one marching with us, bound in chains, held at gunpoint. He chatters occasionally, asking questions about Montfort. No one answers, and his voice dies slowly, left to echo into nothing. Before we reach the Premier's home, Maven is taken away, down another flight of steps, where more guards appear to flank him. Montfort won't risk losing another prisoner. Maven won't get the gentle treatment given to Bracken's children. He will be taken deep into the city, to the prison below the Ascendant main barracks. I try not to watch his silhouette as it grows smaller and smaller. He never looks back. Farley outpaces everyone, even Keylorn in his long strides. I don't have to be a mind reader to guess her thoughts are of her daughter, left behind with the rest of our family. Excuse me. Davidson was good enough to send word on ahead, so his palatial home is ablaze when we approach, the many windows and balconies lit by warm candles and lights. Familiar figures cast shadows across the stones, and we beeline for them. My mother hands off Clara, the baby girl sleepy but smiling as Farley lifts her up. Out of the corner of my eye, I see Davidson embrace his husband, Carmadon, before my mom does the same to me. Her arms squeeze my shoulders tightly, and she hugs me to her chest with a deep sigh. I relax as I only can with the rest of my family, letting them usher us inside and up to our rooms. The reunion is sentimental as ever, even though it's become a habit. I leave, face death, and against all odds, return in one piece. I know my parents would tie me down to stop me from repeating the cycle, if they thought it might work, but they trust me to make my own choices. And besides, I'm a new blood, the Lightning Girl. There are very few bonds that can hold me back, no matter how much I might want to stay. The need to move on, to keep fighting, is always stronger. Farley disappears into her own bedroom, Clara on her hip, with an exhausted smile. No one stops her. She needs time alone with her daughter, and we're all happy to give it. Instead, my family filters onto the tile terrace, which is bursting with more flowers than I remember. Trammy has been busy. They're beautiful, I tell him, gesturing to a lovely array of white blooms curling up and over the railing. He heaves himself into a chair with a bashful grin, and Giza perches on the arm of the seat. I plop down next to them both, content to sit on a flat, squishy, swashy cushion set on the tile. Mom helped, Trammy says, gesturing across to her. At the edge of the terrace, she waves a hand. Her hair is down tonight. I'm used to long years of my mother in twisted braids and neat buns, always keeping her hair out of her face. Despite the gray, she looks younger than this, or a lot younger like this. I just followed you around with a watering can, she says. I've never considered Ruth Barrow beautiful. How could anyone, let alone a poor red woman, be considered beautiful next to Silvers? But Montfort brings a glow to her, a healthiness in her golden skin that makes it gleam. Even her wrinkles seem lessened, softened by the gentle lamplight. Of course, Dad looks better than ever. Harder than he was in the stilts. He's gained weight where he needs to, arms and legs filling out, while his waist looks trimmer. I chalk it up to nutrition, and of course his replaced leg and lung. After he greets me, he settles into his usual gruff silence, claiming a seat of his own next to Bree. The weeks have been good to all of them. especially Jisa. Her dark red hair glints like oil in the dim light. I take in her clothing, a repurposed Montfort uniform, but the cuffs and collar are heavily embroidered in swirls of colored thread, pricking out a pattern of flowers and purple bright zags of lightning. I reach out to her, running my fingers over her careful handiwork. "I can make you one if you like," she says, eyeing my own uniform. The offensively bright red of the Scarlet Guard outfit makes her wrinkle her nose. "Maybe downplay all this," she mutters, waving her hand a little. "Give you something a little better than medals." Keylorn eases himself down next to me, leaning back on his hands with his legs crossed. "Do I get one too?" "If I feel like it," Jisa replies with her usual sniff. She eyes him up and down, as if assessing a customer. Fish instead of flowers, I think. I can't help but chuckle into my hand, grinning at Keylorn's exaggerated pout. "So how long will you be here this time?" My father's voice is still a low grunt, full of accusation. Excuse me. I glance at him, meeting his dark brown eyes, the same eyes as Bree and Trammy, darker than my own. Mom puts a hand on his shoulder, as if she can push him off the subject. "Daniel, she just got back." He doesn't look at her. That's my point. "It's fine," I murmur, glancing between them. It's an honest question, and a good one, especially based on recent circumstances. To tell you the truth, I don't know. It could be days, could be weeks, could be months. My family seems to brighten with each larger measurement of time. It pains me to give them what could be false hope, even though I want it to be true. We still don't know how things will proceed. Dad purses his lips, with Norda. I shake my head, with the Lakelands mostly. The others look on, silent as I explain, except for Keylorn. His brow furrows slowly, creasing his forehead with deep, angry lines. They hold all the power right now. Cal is still consolidating a torn country, and if we're waiting to see how everything shakes out, if the Lakelands strike... Oh, and we're waiting to see how everything shakes out. If the Lakelands strike... Excuse me. My oldest brother draws an angry breath before pushing it out in an exasperated sigh. He glares at me, because there's simply no one else to glare at. You'll help fight them off? As with Dad, I hear an accusation in him. I can only shrug. It isn't me he's frustrated with, but the situation I keep finding myself in. Pulled toward danger, torn between Silver Kings, a weapon to be wielded, a face to be used. I don't know, I mutter. We aren't allied to him anymore. At my side, Keylorn shifts, uncomfortable on the tile, or the subject. And what about the other one? Around the cluster of chairs, my family blanches in varying levels of confusion. Mom crosses her arms over her chest, fixing me with a piercing stare I know all too well. "Who?" she asks, even though she knows. Excuse me. She just wants to make me say it. Gritting my teeth, I force an answer. "He means Maven." My father's voice turns deadly, like I've never heard it before. He should be dead by now. He is not, and he's here. Keylorn snarls before I can stop him. A pulse of fury thrums through my family, every face turning red, every lip curling, all eyes sharpening with glints of rage. "Keylorn, don't start trouble," I hiss, squeezing his wrist. But the damage is already done. The silence around our circle runs heavy with scarlet anger, so strong I can almost taste it. Finally, Jesus speaks, her tone as feral as my father's. "We should kill him." My sister is not a violent girl, better suited to a needle than a knife. But she looks like she could claw Maven's eyes out if given the opportunity. I would feel guilty for bringing this anger out in her, but it can't get beyond the sudden swell of love, appreciation, and pride. My brothers nod slowly, agreeing with her sentiment. They might even be cooking up some harebrained attempt to get into Maven's cell right now. "He's valuable alive," I say quickly, if only to stop them short. "I don't give a shit about his value," Bree snaps. Excuse me. I expect our mother to scold him for his language, but she isn't bothered by the curse. In fact, she looks positively murderous herself. And for an instant, I see the violent love of Queen Annabelle, Larentia Viper, and even Lara Mirandus in her eyes. That creature took my son away from me. took my son from me. And he took you. I'm right here, Mom, I murmur, swallowing around the sudden, painful memory of Shade. You know what I mean, she says. I'll slit his throat myself. Most shocking of all is Dad's silence. He's naturally a quiet man, but not when it comes to despising Silvers. When I glance at him, I realize why he won't say anything. Because he can't. His face is a furious red, boiling with a steady, rising hatred. If he opens his mouth, who knows what might tumble out. Excuse me. Can we talk about something else? I have to ask, looking around at the rest of my family. Please do. Dad barely manages through gritted teeth. You all look well, I say quickly. Is Montfort... Mom seems annoyed, but dips her head in acceptance. She answers for all of them, cutting me off. It's a dream, Mare. My natural suspicion flares, in spite of all I know about Davidson. But I don't know his country or his city. I don't know the politicians he serves or the people they represent. Is it too good, though? I ask. Do you think we'll wake up to find ourselves in trouble? To find something gone horribly wrong? She heaves a heavy sigh, looking out at the sparkling lights of Ascendant. I suppose we should always be wary, but I don't think so, Dawn offers, neatly finishing her thought. His words are few but expressive. This place is different. Excuse me. Jisa nods along with them. I've never seen reds and silvers together like this. Back in Norda, when I went to cell with my mistress, Silvers wouldn't even look at us. Wouldn't touch us. Her brown eyes, the same as mine, glaze a little as she remembers her life as it was so long ago, before a silver officer smashed her apart her sewing hand. Not here. In his seat, Trammy settles back. Some of his ire melting away, like a cat smoothing his fur after a scare. We feel like equals. I can't help but wonder if it's because of me. They're family to the Lightning Girl, a valuable asset to the Montfort Premier. Of course they'd be treated well, but I don't say any of that out loud, if only to maintain some kind of peace on an otherwise tumultuous night. There we go. After that, the conversation becomes far more pleasant. Servants, kindly and smiling, bring up a sizable spread for dinner. The food is simple, but rich and tasty, ranging from fried chicken to sugary, dark purple berries spread over toast. The food is mostly for my benefit and Keylorn's, but Bree and Trammy help themselves to full portions. Jisa favors a tray of fruits and cheeses, while Dad picks himself a plate of cold meats and crackers to share with Mom. We eat slowly, talking more than chewing. I mostly listen, letting my siblings regale me with their stories of their explorations throughout Accident. Bree swims in the lake every morning. Sometimes he wakes up with Trammy in it too. Dumping a bottle of icy water in his head. Jisa has an almost scientific knowledge of the shops and markets, as well as the grounds of the Premier's compound. She likes to walk the high meadows with Trammy, while Mom prefers the gardens in the city, terraced down the slopes. Dad has been honing in his walking abilities, going deeper and deeper into the valley every day, strengthening his new muscles and relearning 2 legs with every step down and every step back up. Keylorn fills in as well as he can, detailing our exploits since we left Montfort last. It's a sparse collection, and he is gracious enough to leave out the more embarrassing or upsetting details, including any mention of Cameron Cole. For Jesus' sake, but judging by the way she spoke about a young girl and the jeweler shop she worked in, I think her old crush on my best friend has passed. Excuse me. Eventually, my eyelids begin to droop. It's been a long, difficult day. I try not to remember how I woke up this morning, in the dark of Cal's royal bedchamber, his blankets over my body. Tonight, I'll sleep in a bed by myself. Not alone, though. Jeez will be just across the room. I still can't sleep without someone else there. Or at least, I haven't tried since I escaped Maven's imprisonment. Excuse me. Don't think about him. I chanted to myself as I prepare for bed, repeating the words over and over. Cal's face seems burned against my eyelids, while Maven haunts even my fleeting, distant dreams. Those stupid boys. They never leave me alone. In the morning, my nerves twitch with energy. It's a constant pull, a tug behind my stomach, like someone has a hook around my spine. I know where it wants me to go. Down into the city, toward the central barracks of Ascendant. The structure squats over the city prison, drilled into the bedrock of the mountainside. I try not to picture him, alone behind the bars, pacing like a dying animal. Why I want to see him, I can hardly understand. Maybe some part of me knows he's still useful, or wants to understand him a little bit more, before time runs out. We're alike in some ways. Too many ways. I've tasted darkness, and he lives in it. He represents what I could become, without my family, without an anchor, if I'm pushed into the abyss. But Maven is the abyss. I can't face him. Not yet. I'm not strong enough to do it. He'll just laugh in my face, taunt and torture, turning the screws embedded too deeply. I need to heal a bit, before he can pick open my wounds again. So instead of walking down into the city, I go up, and up, and up. At first, I followed the road we took over the mountains, when the raiders struck down on the plain. We know now that it was a planned attack, meant to distract us while the Lakelanders rescued Prince Bracken's children. The raiders were paid to do it, and paid well. I kick at stones as I go, replaying the battle in my mind. The silence clawed at my body, like something alive and unnatural beneath my skin, replacing my lightning with emptiness. Cursing, I push the thought away and turn off the road, into the rocks and trees. The hours pass, and the air seems to burn in my lungs, searing down my throat. It's matched only by the fire in my muscles. They scream with each new step, every foot forward and upward over the rocks. Snow puddles in the shadows, white and pure even in the late summer. In turn, it turns ever colder as I climb, my feet sliding over dirt and pine needles, gravel and naked rock. In spite of the pain, I push on. Streams trickle past, running down the mountainside to pool in the lake far below. I look back through the gaps in the pines, into the valley. The mountains dwarf ascendant, and the foreign capital looks like a child's toy from this distance. White blocks strewn around ribbon-thin roads and winding stairs. The mountain range seems endless, a jagged wall of stone and snow dividing the world in half. Above, the clear blue sky beckons me to continue the climb. I do my best, stopping at the streams to drink and splash my red, sweaty face. Occasionally, I fish out crackers for my pack or strips of salted meat. I wonder if the smell might lure a bear or a wolf across my path. I have my lightning, of course, close as the breath in my lungs. Close as the breath in my lungs. But no predator ever comes near. I think they know I'm as dangerous as they are. All except for one. At first, I am mistaken for an outcropping of rock, silhouetted against the perfect blue, still in gray clothing. The pines are sparse set at the high altitude, offering little shade from the noon sun. I have to blink, rubbing my eyes before I realize what I'm looking at. Who I'm looking at. My lightning splits the granite boulder beneath him in two. He moves before it strikes, sliding off into the rocks. You bastard, I snarl, advancing with speed, the adrenaline sudden and surging in my blood. It drives me, as does frustration, because I know, no matter how fast I am, no matter how strong my lightning, I'll never catch him. John will always see me coming. His laughter echoes over the slope. Echoes over the slope, coming from higher up. I startle to myself and follow the sound. Let him lead me. He laughs, and I climb and climb. By the time we're out of the trees, over earth too high for anything to grow, the air has turned harsh and cold. I choke down a gasp of anger, letting the temperature shock my lungs. And I slump, unable to go any farther, unwilling to let John, or anyone, control where I go and what I do. But mostly I'm just exhausted. I lean back, bumping against a large boulder smothered by centuries of unforgiving wind and snow. Excuse me. So sorry. Okay. My breathing becomes hard and heavy. I think I might never catch my breath. Just as I'll never catch the damn seer. I'm sorry. The altitude, his voice says. It makes everything difficult if you aren't used to it. Even your fire prince would have a hard time climbing his first mountain. I'm too tired to do much more than glance at him, eyes half-lidded. He perches above me, legs dangling. John is dressed for the mountains, or for the mountain weather, in a thick coat with well-worn boots on his feet. I wonder how long he's been walking, or how long he had to wait up here for me. You know as well as I do he isn't a prince anymore, I answer, choosing my words very carefully. Maybe I can get him to reveal something. Just a sniff of the future ahead of us all. Just like you know how long he'll be king. Yes, he replies, smirking slightly. Of course he knows what I'm doing, and he says only what he intends to say. I heave another breath, sucking air into my starved lungs. What are you doing here? Taking in the view. He still hasn't looked at me, his red eyes trained on the horizon. The sight before us is amazing, more splendid than it was 1,000 feet below. I really do feel small, and large, everything and nothing, sitting here on the rim of the world. My breath fogs before my eyes, a testament to the chill. I can't stay long, not if I want to get down before nightfall. I wish I could take John's head with me. I told you this would happen, he murmurs. Snarling, I bare my teeth at him. You didn't tell me anything. My brother might be alive if you did. Thousands of people. Have you considered the alternative? He snaps. That's what I did. What I said and didn't say. Did and didn't do. Saved more? I ball up a fist and kick my foot, send a shower of gravel skittering down the slope. Have you considered just keeping your nose out of everything? John barks a laugh. Many times. But whether I involve myself or not, I see the path. I see the destination. And sometimes I just can't let it happen. So nice you get to decide. I sneer, bitter as I always am with the wretched new blood. Would you like the burden, Mayor Barrow? John replies, lowered himself down so we sit side by side. He smiles sadly. I don't think so. I shudder beneath his crimson attention. He told me I would rise, and rise alone. I mutter, repeating the words he spoke so long ago, in an abandoned cold town half shrouded by the rain. That was my fate, and have watched become truer with every passing day. When I lost Shade, when I lost Cal. But also in the steady detachment, the cold hand seems to worm itself between me and everyone else I love. No matter how hard I try to ignore it, I can't help but feel different, broken, and angry, and therefore alone. With only one person left who truly understands, and he is a monster. I lost Maven too, the person he pretended to be, the friend I loved and needed when I was so alone and so afraid. I've lost so many people, but I've gained many. Farley, Clara, my family is still with me, safe but for Shade. Keylorn, never wavering in his loyalty and friendship. I have the Electricons, new bloods like me, who prove I am not alone. Premier Davidson and all he hopes to do, they outnumber everyone I've lost. Excuse me. I don't think you were right, I mumble, half believing the words. Next to me, John jolts, his neck cracking as he looks at me sharply. Oh, or has that path changed too? Even though I hate his eyes, I force myself to stare into them, to look for a lie or for the truth. Did I change it? He blinks slowly. You changed nothing. I feel like elbowing him in the throat, or the gut, or the skull. Instead, I slump backward, tipping my head to glare at the sky. John watches, chuckling a little. I snarl. Or what? What? I snarl, eyeing him. Rise, he murmurs, pointing to the valley thousands of feet below. Then he points to my chest, and rise alone. This time, I bent his arm weakly, wishing I could inflict more hurt on the seer. I know you weren't talking about climbing a mountain, I growl. No longer the lightning, but the storm that will swallow the world entire. He just rolls his shoulders and looks out to the range again, his breath steaming in the cold air. Who knows what I was talking about? You do. And I'll keep that weight to myself. Thank you very much. No one else needs it. I scoff. You act as if you enjoy lording our fates over us. Chewing my lip, I weigh my chances again. A hint from him could be infinitely valuable or damning. Throw me onto a path of his choosing. I simply have to take the chance and consider what he says with a mountain of salt. Any more choice words, little nudges you might condescend to give? The corner of his mouth lifts, But his eyes waver, almost sad. Your friend is better at fishing than you. Cool air whistles down my throat as I inhale sharply. What do you know about Keylorn? I ask, my voice climbing an octave. Keylorn is no one to John. No one to grand movements of kingdoms invade. He shouldn't take up an inch of space in John's head. Not in comparison to the thousands of dangerous and horrible things he does keep in there. I move to grab his arm, but he shifts neatly from my touch. His red eyes stare, like twin drops of blood. He's the catalyst for all this, isn't he? For your part in it, at least, he says. The poor friend doomed to conscription, with only you to save him. John's words are slow, methodic, deliberate. Give me time to put together the pieces of this part of the puzzle. I try not to know. Try not to accept what is staring me in the face. I want to kill him. Smash his head against the rock. But I can't move. Because he lost his apprenticeship, I say, trembling. Because Keylorn's master died. Because Keylorn's master fell. It isn't a question. John knows exactly what happened to old Cully, the fisherman my best friend used to serve. A simple man, gray before his years, just like the rest of us. Tears fill my eyes. I've been a puppet for too long, even longer than I thought possible. You pushed him. I pushed many people, in many different ways. Did you push an innocent man to his death? I seethe. Something switches in him, like a lamp turning off for on, shifting his focus. He gathers himself and sniffs, his voice suddenly clear, more forceful, as if he's addressing a crowd of soldiers, rather than just me. The Lakelands will strike Archeon soon, he says. Within a few weeks. They're preparing as we speak, drilling their armies past the point of perfection. Tiberius Calor is weak, and they know it. I don't have the heart or stomach to argue. He's right, and I'm still reeling. If they take the city, Tiberius will never win Norda. Not this year, not the next, not even 100 years from now. I clench my teeth. You could be lying. He ignores me, forging on. If the capital falls to the Queen of the Lakelands, the road becomes long and bloody, worse than anything you've experienced before. In his lap, he knits his fingers together, knuckles going white against the gray of his clothes. Even I can barely see the ending of that path, but I know it's terrible. I don't like being your chess piece. Everyone is someone else's pawn, Mare, whether we know it or not. Whose pawn are you? He doesn't respond, only raising his eyes to the sky, to the clear, cold sky. With a final sigh, he pushes himself to his feet, dislodging rocks with the motion. You should get going, or get moving, he says, gesturing down the mountain, so I can pass on your message? I snap, sounding bitter. Taking John's orders is the last thing I want to do right now, even if he's right. I think I'd rather freeze than give him that satisfaction. So you can avoid that, he replies. With his chin, he points off to the north, where a band of cloud gathers across the peaks. Storms move quickly up here. I can handle storms. Do as you wish, John replies, shrugging. He pulls his coat tighter around himself. We will not see each other again, Mare Barrow. Still on the ground, I sneer up at him. Good. He doesn't respond and turns around to continue his climb. I watch his figure grow smaller, a gray man against gray stone, until he disappears. To rise, and rise alone. The storm breaks on the summit as soon as I step into the protection of the tree line, escaping a howl of wind and freezing rain. It hurts almost as much as going up, my knees jarring with the hard impact of every step. I have to be careful and focus on where I put my feet, lest I break an ankle on the loose stones and pine needles piled over the trail. Above me, back up on the mountains, a low thrum of thunder peals, alive as my own beating heart. Excuse me. I reach ascendant as the first sun sinks beneath the peaks across the valley. Even though I'm sore from the climb and aching from the conversation, my pace quickens as I enter the Premier's palace. I pass Montfort's soldiers and officers, as well as politicians from his government, marked by their fine suits, all milling around the lower level of the building, leaving meetings or going to them. They watch me pass with scrutiny, but not fear. I'm not a freak here. Two heads of shocking here. one blue and one bone white, stand out in the crowd of dark green suits and uniforms. Ella and Titan. My fellow Etricons idle in one of the windowed alcoves, taking up enough space that they can be left alone. Waiting for me? You shouldn't have, I say with a smile, my breath still uneven and ragged from the climb. Titan looks me up and down, a lock of white hair falling into his face. He leans back calmly, one long leg planted against the seat across from him. You shouldn't climb mountains alone, he says, especially when you're not good at it. You should spend more time with my brothers, Titan, I reply, with a little bite. They're better at teasing me than you are. His grin comes easily, but it doesn't reach his dark eyes. Ella huffs at him. Everyone's in Davidson's library. General Farley and the rest, she offers. Just ring down the hall. My stomach swoops at the prospect of facing yet another council. I grit my teeth. How do I look? The woman licks her lips, her eyes running over me. Titan is less diplomatic. Her hesitation should be answer enough. But you don't exactly have time to put on your war paint, Barrow. Right. Great. I grumble. Leave them both behind. Quickly, I smooth my hair back, trying to hide the wind-tingled knots with a hasty braid. The rest. Who else could be with Farley in the premiere? The library isn't difficult to find. It's one floor up, occupying a large expanse of the eastern side of the palace. Guards flank the double doors, but they don't stop me as I approach. Let me pass in silence. Like the rest of the compound, the library is bright and cheerful, wood-paneled and lacquered, gleaming oak. The chamber is lined with double rows of shelving, the second story ringed by a narrow landing railed in bronze. Currently, soldiers of the Scarlet Guard perch there, blazing in their red uniforms, guns hanging bare. They note me as I enter, tense but ready to protect their charges should I pose a threat. The right generals of command. Farley sits with them in the center of the room, on green leather couches arranged in a half circle. Ada's with them too, having returned after long weeks with command. She stands to the side with her arms crossed, silent, observing everything. She offers me a shadow of a smile as I approach. The Scarlet Guard faces a corresponding arrangement of chairs, all occupied by Montfort officers and politicians, with Davidson himself in the center. They murmur in low voices, undisturbed by my presence, or perhaps expecting it. Again, I feel too dirty to be here, thinking of the cold and the mountain. But I really shouldn't worry. The command generals are as disheveled as I feel, if not more so. They just arrived from wherever their roving headquarters were. They look like Farley, not in appearance but in attitude. If Farley had 30 or more years under her belt, a lifetime of hard-lived and hard-won survival. The 3 men and 3 women are all gray-haired, with short haircuts like Farley's own. I wonder if she wanted to imitate them. Because, despite their similarities, Farley sits in harsh contrast to them all. She is still young, still blooming. Their firebrand. Her father stands among the many officers lining the landing above, leaning against the railing, hands knit together. If he's jealous of his daughter and her position, he doesn't show it. He glances at me as I enter, and even dips his head in greeting, his red eye glowing. The low conversation continues as I move closer. Farley shifts a little, making room for me next to her. But I'm not a general. I'm not command. I haven't earned the right to sit. I fall in behind her, close as a guardian, and cross my arms over her at my chest. Good to meet you, Miss Barrow, the curly-haired general says, turning to look at me over her shoulder with the stern eye of a teacher, as if I've just disturbed a particularly important lesson. I nod in return, not wanting to interrupt the meeting any further, though the subject matter does not seem dire. Many advisors talk among themselves, and conversation buzzes among the soldiers above. We've only just finished introductions, Ada offers kindly, sidling up next to me. Farley watches with a glint in her eye. She leans, whispering in my direction. Don't mind Swan, she adds, nudging the female general. She's just giving you a hard time. To my surprise, the older woman smirks a little. They have a familiar way about them, like old friends or even family, but they share very little resemblance. Swan is short and slim, with sandy skin dusted in dark freckles. They give her an almost childish look, despite her lines of age. General Swan, I murmur, ducking my head again in an attempt to be polite. She returns in kind, smiling this time. Under her breath, Ada rattles off the other generals seated on the remaining couches. After her time at the headquarters, she knows them well. The remaining women are Horizon and Sentry, and the men are Drummer, Crimson, and Southern. Codenames, clearly. Still in use, even here. General Palace is still in Norda, keeping our operations moving, Ada says. She'll relay whatever we can dig up, in Norda and on the borders. What about the Lakelands? I ask. Iris is going to invade, and we'll need to know when. A few weeks, John said. Not nearly specific enough. Swan clears her throat. The Lakelanders closed the borders. I wasn't sure I would be able to get myself out, let alone my staff. And we went as quickly as we could. Her eyes darken. Took some doing, if you catch my meaning. Grimly, I nod and try not to think about how many dead friends she left behind. My eyes skitter across assembled soldiers and politicians. Almost all of them red. A few Silvers of Montfort sit with Davidson, but they are greatly outnumbered. I recognize Radis, the blonde representative from the gallery, among them. He nods his head in the smallest acknowledgement. Davidson does the same, meeting my gaze. With a flush, I clear my throat lightly, stepping out a little. Only the nearby generals turn to look at me. Their soldiers are more difficult to silence, and I have to try again, with more force. Slowly but surely, quiet ripples through them, until every eye in the library lands on me. I swallow hard against the familiar but still unsettling sensation. Don't flinch, don't blush, don't hesitate. My name is Mare Barrow, I say to the assembled crowd. Someone on the landing scoffs quietly. I suppose I need no introduction at this point. Thank you for coming here. I push on, searching for the right way to say what I have to. A man who can see the entire future past along some tips. Just doesn't sound right. I'm sorry I'm late, but I was climbing, and I met a man on the mountain. Is that a metaphor? General Crimson mutters gruffly, only to be hushed by the aptly named drummer, a fantastically round man. I glance at Ada, and then down at Farley. John, I explain, and her eyes widen. The shock on her face speaks volumes to the room. He's a new blood seer, and we've dealt with him before. Davidson raises his chin. So has Maven. If I'm not mistaken, that man was instrumental in your capture. Yes, I mutter, almost ashamed. The Premier purses his lips. And he served Maven for a time. I nod again. He did. For his own reasons. Even though several of his compatriots look dismissive, Davidson leans forward on his elbows, fixing me with an intense, unreadable gaze. What did he say, Mare? That we can't let the Norton capital fall to the Lakelands, I reply. If we do, the road will be long and bloody, worse than anything before. If they win Archeon, the Lakelands will control Norda for 100 years. Radis huffs, inspecting his polished nails. He is the only one to roll their eyes at such a statement. I don't need a seer to know that. A few of the generals bob their heads in agreement. Swan speaks for them. We know an invasion is coming. It's just a matter of when. A few weeks. I can already feel the clock ticking against us. That's what John told me. Swan narrows her eyes, not with unkindness or suspicion, but with pity. And you believe him? After all he did to you? Images flash in my head. Memories of my captivity. The prison John bought me with whatever scheme of fate he put in motion. I told him before that I don't like being his pawn. And it's exactly what I'm doing now. Somehow, I think I do, I reply, fighting to keep my voice firm. The words set off another round of murmurs and even a bit of shouting, from the generals, the representatives, even the soldiers above us. Only 3 of us remained silent, trading glances. Farley, Davidson, and myself. As I look between them, jumping from golden eyes to blue, I see the same resolve in both of them, and I feel it in myself. We'll fight again. We just need to figure out how. As usual, Farley jumps in first. She stands up, hands outstretched, motioning for quiet. It works a little, silencing her soldiers as well as the generals. Some of the Montfort diplomats still whisper among themselves. We need a plan, she barks, regardless of what the seer says. We all know this road leads to Archeon. Montfort and the Scarlet Guard have to be able to overthrow the Norton capital if we want any chance of freeing the country, no matter who sits on the throne. Swan nods. I was stationed in the Lakelands before we fled here. I've seen more of their strength than anyone here. If the Signet Queens gain the city before we can, it will be almost impossible to take it back. It's in our best interest to fight the weaker enemy. Cal. Never have I thought of him as the weaker half of anything, but it's certainly true. His position is precarious at best. I try not to picture him alone in his palace, trying to balance the world his father and brother broke. You still have the Scarlet Guard in Archeon, yes? Davidson asks, and his voice is enough to quiet the rest of his people. Palace is stationed just outside, Farley says, with her own teams in place through as much of the country as can be managed. Harbor Bay, Delphi, the Archeon outskirts. Drummer, the portly general, jumps in. Excuse me. Palace has orders to move into the city. Quietly, of course. The new king is not his brother, and his regime is not yet openly hostile to the Scarlet Guard. We can risk it. So we'll have eyes in the city at least. Davidson muses. Yours as well as our own. We'll make sure they coordinate. The Scarlet Guard has infiltrated Archeon before. Drummer puffs out his impressive chest. It can be done again. The Premier's lips press into a thin, grim line. But not in the same way, he says. 2 changes from the air. Now that Cal has the full force of the air fleet behind him, we can't match their aerial strength for a landing. And we can't rely on a surprise like we did at Maven's wedding. And the tunnels, Farley mutters, thinking of the coup that failed before it even began. King Maven closed up everything beneath the city. Not everything, I blurt out. The others blink at me, hard-eyed and eager. I've seen Maven's train, his escape plan. It runs straight under the treasury, and there are more entrances below the palace. He used it to leave the city unseen. I'm willing to bet he left some tunnels intact, if only for his own use. With a will, Drummer rolls to his feet. He's surprisingly agile for his age and size. I can relate to Palace. Have her start sniffing it out. Ada, you've got city plans in your head, yes? I do, sir, she answers quickly. I can't imagine what Ada doesn't have preserved in her perfect mind. Drummer ducks his chin. Get on the comms with Palace. Help her run operatives. Without hesitation, Ada nods. Yes, sir, she says, already walking from the library. Excuse me. Farley clenches her jaw and watches our friend go, disappearing from the room. Then she glances sidelong at me, weighing my response. Do we have time for that? Probably not, I mutter. If only John had been more precise in his damned warning. But I suppose that's too easy. It is in his way. So what can we do? She prods. A sudden headache throbs at my temples, and I pinch the bridge of my nose. Earlier today, I climbed a mountain to keep away from Maven. Of course, my efforts only prolonged the inevitable, and the necessary. Well, I guess we can just ask. Without Julian dissing a confession out of him, or any whispers, new blood or otherwise, an interrogation of Maven Clore will be a two-sided battle of wills and deception. Though Montfort has silvers to spare, none can draw truth through ability alone, but they can draw it through pain. Before Maven is brought in, one of the officers returns with Titan in tow, the white-haired electricon looking dour as he enters the room. He settles into his seat on Davidson's side of the room and drums his fingers, the movement quick and twitching, like the lightning he may have to use on Maven. His ability is far more precise than my own, able to push a body to its limit without destroying what cannot be repaired. The room is deathly silent, except for the soldiers above, as well as the most of the Montfort representatives. Davidson and the Guard Generals are smart enough not to give Maven an audience. He's too good a performer, too good a liar. I can sit now, sandwiched between Farley and the armrest of her couch. She's broader than I am, but I'm glad for her close presence. The thought of Maven still chills my blood. At least in Archeon, there was Cal to display his attention, his obsession, and his fury. Now there's just me. His guards are many, a half dozen at least. Montfort soldiers and Scarlet Guard alike, armed to the teeth with weapons and abilities. He revels in the attention and the need for such precautions, smiling slightly as they lead him into the library. His icy eyes sweep over the chamber quickly, noting the windows, the books, and the people waiting for him. I hold his gaze. I must admit, I never expected to see you again, Premier, he says, breaking his stare to look at Davidson. The unflappable man doesn't react, his face still and neutral, Nor did I ever think I would set foot in the mysterious wilds of Montfort. But this isn't so wild, is it? Not as much as you would have us believe. It's wild enough, I think, remembering our battle with a herd of bison. I was taught your country was a land of silvers as much as my own, albeit divided by many kings and lords. How wrong my instructors were. Maven keeps on, turning slightly as he speaks. He could be counting us. The 7 generals of command, matched by Davidson, and the representatives from his government and military. He stops when he spots Aratus, plainly silver-blooded with his cold-hued skin. How interesting, he murmurs. I don't believe we've had the pleasure, sir. The older silver flexes a hand, the waning sunlight flashing on his long nails. A soft brush of wind rustles through Maven's hair. A warning. Save your breath, princeling. There are things to discuss. Maven only grins. I just didn't expect to see silvers here, in the midst of such crimson company. I huff, already bored of his stalling tactics. You said yourself, you don't know anything about this place. Maven turns back to me, glaring, but I wave him off. And you don't need to. He bares his teeth. Because you'll execute me before long? Is that the threat you're trying to make, Mare? I set my jaw, electing not to answer. It's an empty one. If you were going to kill me, you would have done it already. I'm worth more alive, to you and your cause. The room remains silent in reply. Oh, don't play coy, Maven sneers. As long as I breathe, I'm a threat to my brother. My brother, same as he was to me. I assume he's collecting loyalties now, recalling the high houses of Norda, trying to win over those who pledge allegiance to me. And some will, but all? Slowly, he ticks his head back and forth, clucking his tongue like a scolding mother. No, they'll sit back and wait. Or they'll fight him. For you? I snap back. I doubt that. He makes a noise low in his throat, a growl more suited to an animal. What exactly do you need from me? He says, wrenching his eyes away. He moves gracefully, swiveling on his toes to face the rest of the chamber. The fallen king has no cage, but he is obviously trapped. For some reason, his eyes waver on Titan, looking over the electricon, with his white hair and calmly murderous disposition. And who is he? Who is he? To my surprise, I hear fear in Maven color. Farley pounces, smelling blood in the water. You're going to tell us what you did to the Archeon tunnels. Which ones are closed? Which ones are open? Which ones you built after you took the throne? In spite of his predicament, Maven rolls his eyes and laughs. You people in your tunnels. The young general is not deterred. Well, and what do I get out of this? He leers at her. A better view for myself? Not that it would be difficult. I currently have no windows. With oddly twitching hands, he counts off on his fingers. Better food? Visitors, perhaps? Maven wavers a little, teeth on edge. His body seems to shiver. Whatever control he maintains is beginning to slip. A painless death? I fight the urge to grab him, if only to keep him still. He reminds me of a rat in a trap, squirming for his life. You get the satisfaction, Maven. I force out. I should be used to the sensation of his eyes running through me. I'm not, and I shudder. His gaze a featherweight on my skin. Of what? He murmurs. Despite the earth between us, Maven feels much too close. The words taste sour in my mouth. You know what? His grin widens, a white knife to taunt us. If I can't have the throne, neither can he says plainly. Well, that's something at least. His voice drops, as does his grin, but not enough. Behind him, Davidson looks to his side, exchanging a stern glance with Titan. After a long moment, the white-haired electricon unfolds from his chair. He rises slowly, deliberately, hands loose at each side. Maven turns at the sound, sharp in his motions. His eyes widen. Who is he? Maven asks again. I try to ignore the tremor in his voice. I raise my chin. Someone like me. Titan drums a hand against his leg, running a single, blinding white spark down his finger. But stronger. Dark lashes flutter against pale cheeks, and Maven's throat bombs. His next words are reluctant, stumbling. Low, almost inaudible. I need something in exchange. He hisses. My teeth clench in frustration. Maven, I already told you. The fallen king cuts me off, wrenching his eyes from Titan to look back at me with all his black fire. When you invade, which you're planning to do, he sneers. baring his teeth. I'll lead you where you need to go. Which tunnels? Which paths? I'll bring your whole army into the city myself, and set you loose on my wretched brother. Farley scoffs from her seat. Into a trap, no doubt. Into the teeth of your signet bride. Oh, she'll be there, no doubt. Maven replies, waving a finger at her. Her face flushes with anger. That snake and her mother may have been planning to ignore us since the moment she set foot in my kingdom. The moment you let her in, I mutter. Maven barely flinches. A calculated risk. And so is this. Excuse me. Hardly convincing, even to those who don't know him. The command generals look more disgusted than when he walked in. No mean feat. While the new bloods of Montfort seem more inclined to skin Maven alive. The premier, usually so level-headed, curls his lips into the rare, obvious scowl. Again, he nods at Titan, and the Electricon takes one shuddering step forward. It sets something off in Maven. He jumps out of reach, keeping his distance from all of us. The twitching returns in force. But his eyes are blaze, all fire. No fear. You think I can't lie through pain? He snarls, his voice thundering through the room. You think I haven't done it 1,000 times? No one has an answer for him, especially not me. I try not to react. Not to give him the satisfaction of seeing an emotion from me. I feel horribly, unable to keep my eyes open. For a brief, empty moment, I see nothing but darkness. I try not to think of Maven, his words, what his life was and continues to be, and how we've all suffered because of it. I expect the others to give him no quarter, to torture what we need from him, draw it out with lightning and pain. Will I be strong enough to watch? Even Farley falters. She stares at Maven, trying to read him, trying to weigh the risk and the cost. He meets her eyes while quailing. She swears under her breath. For once, he's telling the truth. Maven Kalor is our only chance. And now we are on chapter 30, and chapter 30 is Cal's point of view. We've only had Cal's point of view, I think, one other time in this book, so yay, we get to see his point of view. I'm excited. Okay. So again, chapter 30 with Cal. A coronation has always been in my future. The ceremonial crown is not a surprise. I turn it over in my hands, feeling the formidable weight of iron, silver, and gold. In less than an hour, my grandmother will put this monstrosity on my head. My father wore it too. He was already a king when I was born, with a different queen from the only one I recall. I wish I could remember her. I wish the memories I had of my mother were my own, and not stories from Julian. Not the brush of oil paint instead of living flesh. The diary copy is still locked away, hidden in a drawer at my bedside in my Archean chambers. I'll have to move it soon, once the king's rooms are prepared, washed clean of Maven's presence. I shudder at the thought. I don't know why I'm so hesitant to lay hands on such a small and terrible thing. It's just a book, just a jumble of scrawled letters pieced together. I faced down execution squads and armies, fought lightning and storm, dodged bullets, fallen through the sky more than once. And somehow, my mother's diary scares me more than anything else. I could barely get through a few pages, and even those I had to read with my Flamemaker bracelet far away. Her words set me so on edge. I don't want to risk turning the pages to ash in my hands. The last pieces of Corian Jacobs, carefully preserved by my uncle. The original is long gone, but he was able to save this much of her. I don't know what her voice sounded like. I could find out if I really wanted to. There are many recordings of her, and photographs too. But like my father did, I stay away from them. From a ghost I never knew. Part of me doesn't want to get up from the table here in this room. It's quiet, peaceful, the inside of a bubble about to burst. I feel as if I'm standing on a threshold. The windows look out on Caesar Square, offering a full view of the chaos to come. Silvers in their house colors stream back and forth over the plaza, most of them heading for the royal court. I can barely look at the structure, one of the many reigning in the square. My father was crowned there, beneath a glittering dome, and Maven was married in the court some months ago. Mare's with him then. She won't be here now. The loss of her still hurts. A deep wound, but it's missing the same edge as before. We both know what we were doing. what our choices would be when the time came to choose. I only wish we had a few more days, a few more hours. Now she's gone, with Maven again. I should be angry. It's a betrayal by any other name. She stole a valuable prisoner from me. His execution would have been an easy and almost loveless way to reunite my kingdom. But somehow I can't feel anything but annoyance. Partly because I'm not surprised, and mostly because Maven is far beyond my reach. He's her problem now. At least I won't have to be the one to kill him. It's the thought of a coward. Something I was never allowed to be. I think it anyway. I hope he dies without pain. The knock at the door gets me up faster than I want. My legs unfolding beneath me. I wrench it open before Julian or Nanabelle steps inside, hoping to do just one last thing on my own. I'm not a fool. I know what they are to me. Besides my last remaining family, advisors, mentors, rivals to each other. I only hope they haven't come together to poison my peace with their competition. It's just Julian waiting, to my relief. He offers a twitch of a smile and spreads his arms wide, showing off his new clothing, specially made for the coronation. His colors dominate, the dusty yellow gold of House Jacobs forming the base of his trim jacket and pants. But his lapels are blood red, my own color, displaying his allegiance not just to House Calor, but to me. It forces me to think of what he's done in my name. Traded a man's life for my brother, and maybe another life too. I haven't forgotten. His scheming, as also my grandmother's, is never far from my mind. It makes me wary, even of him. Is this what being king is? Trusting no one? I force a laugh to disguise my unease. You look good, I tell him. It is like Julian to be so put together, nearly handsome in his lean form. My uncle steps aside. This old thing. He offers with a dry smile. What about you? Are you ready? I gesture to my own clothes. The now familiar blood-red suit, edged in black, with silver adornments and enough medals to sink a Lakelander ship. I haven't donned the matching cape yet. It's too heavy, and kind of stupid looking. I'm not talking about the clothes, Cal, Julian says. My cheeks flush. I turn quickly, trying to hide any sign of weakness or trepidation. I figured you weren't. Well, he asks, taking a step closer. I do as I've always been taught. I hold my ground. Father told me once there's no such thing as being ready. If you think you are, you aren't. Then I guess it's a good thing you look like you might escape out a window. Comforting. Your father was nervous too, Julian says softly. Tentative, he puts a hand on my shoulder. His touch of soft weight. My tongue sticks in my mouth, unable to form the words I want to say. But Julian is smart enough to know what I want to ask. Your mother told me, my uncle explains. She said he'd wish he had more time. More time? I feel like Julian just hit me in the chest with a hammer. Don't we all? He shrugs in his usual frustrating way. Like he knows more than I do. Which I suspect he does. For different reasons, I think. Strange, isn't it? No matter how different we might be, we all end up wanting the same thing. I avoid his eyes when they rise to mine. They look far too much like the eyes of my mother's painting. But for all the wanting, all the hoping, all the dreaming we might do, all I can do is nod, cutting him off. I don't have the luxury of that anymore. Dreaming? He blinks, perplexed, but also intrigued. My Uncle Julian delights in puzzles, and he looks on me as one. You're about to be a king, Cal. You could dream with your eyes open and build what you wish. Again, I feel the hammer blow. My chest aches with the force of his words, as well as the judgment behind them. And of course, because I've heard that same damn sentence so many times. I'm tired of telling people that isn't true. Julian narrows his eyes, and I cross my arms instinctively, shielding myself. Are you sure? He asks. If you're talking about Mare, she's already halfway across the continent. She won't. Almost smiling, Julian holds up a hand, showing long, thin fingers. Soft hands. Better suited to book pages. Never used in war. Never needed in battle. I envy those hands. Cal, I'm a romantic. But I'm sorry to say I'm not talking about her or your broken heart. That is incredibly low on my list of worries. You have my sympathy, but there are many, many other things to be considered right now. Again, Heat flares on my cheeks, and even the tops of my ears. Julian takes it in stride, and thankfully looks away. When you're ready to go, I'll be outside the door. But time is up. I can't hide any longer. Like Father said, I murmur. With a will, I sling the cape around my shoulders, fasten it in place. I'll never be ready. I walk around him and pull open the door. Stepping out of the protection of my private chambers feels like running a mile. Sweat prickles down my back, rolling along my spine. With every fiber, I fight the urge to run away, to go back, to stand still. Julian keeps pace at my side, like a crutch. Chin up, he warns. Your grandmother is around the corner. I shoot him the best grin I can muster. It feels weak and false, like so many things these days. The crystal dome of the royal court is a masterwork of silver craftsmanship. As a boy, I thought it was made of stars stolen from the night sky, each one molded to glittering perfection. It still gleams today, but not as brightly as it should. Red servants are few, many having elected to leave their posts rather than accept better pay and treatment. They aren't around to make the capital gleam and shine the way it should for a coronation. I can't even look the part, I think bitterly. My reign begins in ashes. Such is the way across the capital, and across my new kingdom. Red's pursuing a new place in the world, and Silver's scrambling to understand what it means for the rest of us. The tech towns are almost empty, and rolling power outages plague many cities, Archeon included. Our manufacturing capabilities will follow quickly, with stores and replies already strained. I can barely fathom the effect this will have on our war effort and our military might. I expected this, of course. I knew this would happen. At least the Lakelander War is over. Or, I should say, the first Lakelander War. Another is certainly about to start. It's only a matter of time before Iris and her mother return. Their armies in tow. Murmurs follow me down the long aisle of court, until I reach the center of the floor beneath the dome. The massive hall echoes, as if filled with hissing ghosts, all sneering about my failure, my betrayal, my weakness. I try not to think about such things as I kneel before the eyes of dozens, my neck bare and vulnerable. We attacked Maven after a ceremony in this very place. Excuse me. Who's to say someone else wouldn't repay the favor? I try not to think about that either. I focus instead on the floor beneath my knees, bone-white marble swirled with charcoal gray. The absence of color in the room is supposed to look striking next to a crowd of the multicolored high houses, white and black against the rainbow. The court seats 1,000 comfortably, but less than 1,000 are here today. Many houses were decimated by the Civil War, lost in battle on both sides, for both sons of House Kalor. My grandmother's house stands out proudly in their flaming colors, as do the surviving members of Evangeline's family, Samos and Viper both. Allies like House Laris and Ariel are easy to pick out. There are other families, too, who were loyal to Maven before, but no longer. Rambos, well, Macinthos sit in their colors. Red brown, green and gold, silvery blue. But others are missing entirely. The Ostanos nymphs are nowhere to be seen. The same can be said of Igori, Provos, and, to my chagrin, many Skonos skin healers and every Arvin silent. They aren't the only ones. I'm sure Julian and Annabelle are taking stock of who refused to come, carefully noting who was an ally, and who was still an enemy. Not enough of one, too many of the other. Above me, Annabelle is careful not to look bothered by the obvious absences in the court. Her face is still and proud, her bronze eyes nearly aflame as she holds my father's crown. Long live the true king, Tiberius the Seventh, she says firmly, her voice echoing around the chamber. Even though this circle of iron is cold to my brow, I don't startle or flinch. I'm trained not to bat an eye at gunshots or flame, but when the silver nobles around me repeat her words, I start to shiver. To say it again and again. The true king. It resounds like a heartbeat. It's real. This is happening. I am a king. The king. Finally, I'm where I was born to be. On the one hand, I feel the same as I did this morning. I'm still Cal. Still played by aches old and new. Bruises seen and unseen. Still terrified of what is to come, and what I might have to do in order to protect my weak kingdom. Terrified of who this crown will turn me into. Has the transformation already begun? Perhaps In small parts of me, forgotten corners, I may be changing. I already feel apart, alone, even with Julian and my grandmother looming close, my own flesh and blood. But too many people are missing. My mother, my father, Mare, and Maven too. The brother I thought I had. The person who barely existed. Never existed. Excuse me. We grew up knowing I would be king and he would stand at my side. My strongest ally, my most fervent supporter, my best advisor. A shield and a crutch. A second opinion. A sanctuary. Not once did I question the arrangement, and I never thought he did either. How wrong I was. The loss of him hurt before, but now, with a crown on my head, with no one to take his place, suddenly it's very difficult to breathe. I have to look at Annabelle, to hopefully find whatever solace I can in my grandmother. She smiles just for me, bracing her hands on my shoulders. I try to see my father in her. A flawed king. A flawed parent. And I miss him terribly. Especially right now. I all of a sudden feel like I want to cry. Why in the world is that? Oh my goodness gracious. She smiles just for me, bracing her hands on my shoulders. I try to see my father in her. Oh no, I read that already, sorry. I would hug her if she'd let me, but she keeps me at a distance. Her elbows lock, forcing me to stand up straight. On display. On parade. A vision for the nobles. A message. Tiberius Calor is king, and he will never kneel again. Not even Davalos Samos. We approach him first. Annabelle on my arm. One king to another. I bow my head, and so does Vala. He looks over me slowly, his expression stony but vague. Congratulations, your majesty, he says, eyeing my crown. I do the same, nodding at the naked steel across his forehead. Thank you, your majesty. At his side, the Viper Queen stiffens, one hand firm on her husband's arm, as if to hold him back. But Vala does nothing, and neither do I. My grandmother and I manage to pass without incident, nodding in turn to the Samus royals. Evangeline catches my eye, looking small at her brother's side. She's more subdued than usual. Her gown and jewelry dull in comparison to the rest of her family. Silver silk so dark it might be black. Better suited to attending a funeral instead of a coronation. After what she said a week ago, she very well could be. If her suspicions are correct, her father's living on borrowed time, and she won't raise her finger to stop it. The moment shudders between us, born of a mutual secret and an understanding that neither of us wants what comes next. Now that I'm officially the king of Norda, there's nothing standing in the way of my marriage to Evangeline. It's been a long time coming, and yet somehow nowhere near long enough. We have no more illusions where this betrothal is concerned. Evangeline's face falls, melting from detached apathy to disgust. She turns away, using the bulk of her brother's body to hide her face. The next few hours blur together in a swirl of color and pleasantries. I'm no stranger to royal celebrations. It's easy to slip back into the rhythm, playing an easy game of conversation, saying much and still saying nothing at all. Annabelle and Julian stay with me through it, and we make a formidable team. If only the two of them weren't so obvious at their game. With Maven defeated and a war momentarily ended, their alliance is shaky at best. There's nothing to unite them besides me, and I feel like a little more than a bone tugged between two hounds. My grandmother is more vicious, more daring, a queen of many years who knows how to navigate both the court and the battlefield. But Julie knows my heart better than she does. I do my best to enjoy the food at dinner. It's edible, but nothing compared to the feast we used to have. Somehow, I find myself missing Carmody and Premier Davidson's dinner. Well, this is evidently less awkward. What they prepared was delicious. I'm not the only one who notices the quality. Evangeline doesn't touch a single course, and her mother doesn't even condescend to feed her meat to the panther curled around her ankles. Like the electricity, like the servants, like the factories grinding to a halt all over Norda, good food seems to be growing scarce. In the fields, the deliveries, the preparation, I'd wager most of the palace chefs are gone too. Annabelle cleans her plate like nothing is amiss. We're going to lose this war. I can't help but murmur, leaning to my left so only Julian can hear me. A muscle flexes in his cheek, and he drains his glass of wine. Not here, Cal. He replies, hiding his mouth with the rim of his glass. Would the king like to retire? The king would. Very well. My uncle mutters, putting his glass back down. For a second, I don't know what to do. I realize I'm waiting to be dismissed, but no one here can do such a thing. This is my throne and my palace. I need only stand. I do so quickly. Clear my throat to excuse myself. Annabelle is quick to recognize a single. I need to be done with this. Our thanks for your presence today, and your loyalty, she says, her hands spread wide to better command the attention of the chamber. Nobles in front of us fall silent, their murmurs and conversations sliding to a graceful halt. We've all journeyed through the storm, as it were, and I speak for the royal family when I say how grateful we are to have you with us, and to have Norda made whole again. It's a naked lie, plain as the food forgotten on so many plates. Norda is far from whole. The half-empty banquet hall is proof of that. And while I don't want to be a king like Maven, building my throne on deceit and dishonesty, I see no other option now. We need to be strong, even if it's only an illusion. I put a hand on Annabelle's shoulder. A careful gesture. She obliges, angling back to let me speak. One storm has passed, yes, but I would be a fool to pretend another is not gathered on the horizon. I say, speaking as clearly as I can. So many eyes look at me. Their clothes and colors vary, but not their blood. Everyone see to hear is silver. See to hear. And I shudder at the implication. Our red allies are gone for good. When the war comes again, we will be fighting alone. The Lakelands will not be satisfied behind their borders. Not when they came so close to removing Maven through the princess. Some of the nobles murmur, their heads drawn together. Follow doesn't move, staring at me from his seat farther down the high table. I feel pierced by his gaze, by his glare. When the storm breaks, I'll be ready. I promise you that. Ready to fight, to lose, and probably die. Strength and power, someone shouts from the crowd, cheering the old refrain of my father and his father before him, an emblem of Norda. Others echo the call. I should too, but I can't. I know what those words mean. Who exactly we have strength and power over. My jaw remains firmly shut. Julian stays close to my heels as I escape the banquet hall, utilizing the serving passages instead of the main halls. My grandmother trails with us, with her Lorland soldiers bringing up the rear of our Patrick parade. I still don't have sentinels, as a king should, as I did when I was a prince and things still worked properly. We're rightfully weary of the guards once oath to protect Maven, even if many of them have pledged their loyalty with their houses. Finding guards of my own, people I can trust, is simply another item on an increasingly long list of things to be accomplished. Just the thought exhausts me. I'm yawning by the time I reach the door to my temporary quarters, even though it's barely past nightfall. At least I have a good excuse to be tired. It isn't every day one becomes king. The crown is an infinite reminder. Both Annabelle and Julian follow me into the adjoining salon, leaving the guards in the hall. I stop my grandmother with a look. If it's all right, I'd like to speak to Julian. I try to make it sound like an order. I shouldn't be asking permission to talk with one of my closest advisors here. Still, I feel tentative, and sound worse. Her face falls, pulling to an affronted frown. Wounded, even. Like I've hurt her. Briefly, I add, trying to undo the harm. Next to her, Julian clasps his hands together. His expression blank. She stiffens. Of course, Your Majesty, she murmurs, ducking her head. Her iron gray hair reflects the lamps like a flash of steel. I'll leave you to it. With a rushing whirl of flame-colored clothing, my grandmother turns on her heel without another word. My fist clenches, keeping me from reaching out. It's difficult balancing the love of family with the needs of a kingdom. The door shuts behind her, sharper than it needs to. I wince at the sound. Julian wastes no time, opening his mouth before he manages to take a seat on the plump sofa. I brace myself for the inevitable lecture. You shouldn't speak that way in public, Cal. We're going to lose this war. He isn't wrong. I grimace anyway, crossing to the arched windows overlooking the bridge of Archeon, the river, and the star-dappled horizon beyond. From this distance, the ships on the water look like stars too, as with the crowd at the coronation. There are fewer ships than there should be. Less trade, less travel. I've been king for a day, and my kingdom is already living on borrowed time. I can only guess what might happen to the people in it, should the rest collapse. I lay a hand against the window glass. It steams beneath my touch. We don't have the manpower to turn back an invasion. Your decree puts our armies at 40% strength. If the current reports are accurate, most Red soldiers have left the military or are leaving. New recruits mostly. Those left behind are battle-hardened, at least, he says, but spread too thin, I mutter. Excuse me. The Lanklander border is hostile again, not to mention Piedmont to the south. We're surrounded and outnumbered. And with fall coming, what harvest can we expect with no farmers? How can we shoot the guns if no one is making the bullets? My uncle brushes a hand under his chin, studying me. You regret making your decrees. He is one of the only two people I would ever admit it to. I do. It was the right decision. For how long? I can't help but snap. Flaring with heat, I turn away from the window, undoing the top buttons of my jacket as I move. The colder air hits my fevered skin, chilling and soothing. When the Lakelands return, they'll wipe away whatever I've tried to do. This is the way of things, Cal. Julian's calm tone only serves to rankle me further. In the histories, great moments of upheaval, whole shifts in societies, they take time to rebalance. Reds will return to work, albeit with better pay and treatment. They need to feed and protect their families too. We don't have that kind of time, Julian. I mutter, exasperated. I think someone will have to redraw your maps very soon. The kingdom of Norda will fall. He tracks me as I pace, never moving from his seat. I suppose I should have asked this days ago, but is there a reason you're so married to the idea of this kingdom and that crown? Instead of spinning out, my mind slows. My tongue feels heavy in my mouth, a stone weighing down whatever I might struggle to say. Julian continues on through my silence. You say now that you think we'll lose. You'll lose, because of the decrees and changes you've chosen to make. But you have no ally, because you have no allies. On the sofa, he stretches, gesturing with one hand. He casts his finger toward the window, meaning all things. You did almost everything the Scarlet Guard in Montfort asked. Give up everything they wanted. Except that. He points at the crown still nestled on my head. Why? If you knew you would never be able to keep it. My answer sounds foolish, like it comes from a child. I say it anyway. This is my father's crown. But the crown is not your father, he says quickly, rising to his feet. In two strides, he has me by the shoulder, and his voice softens. It isn't your mother either, and it won't bring either of them back. I can't bear to look at him. He's too much like her, like the shadow of my mother I carry in my head. A wish and a dream. Probably not a real reflection of her. An impossibility. Maven was tortured by his mother who lived and breathed. But I am tortured too. Tortured by a woman taken away from me. This is who I am, Julian. I try to keep my breathing even. To try to sound like a king. The words make sense as I think them, but they come out wrong. Stumbling. Unsure. It's everything I've ever known. The only path I've ever wanted or been made to want. My uncle tightens his grip on my shoulders. Your brother could say the same. And where did that lead him? I bristle at that, glaring at him. We're not the same. No, you aren't, he replies hastily. Then his attitude changes, a strange look coming over him. Julian narrows his eyes, lips pressing to a thin, grim line. You haven't read the diary, have you? Again, I drop my gaze, ashamed of how afraid I am of a simple, small book. I don't think I can, I whisper, barely audible. Julian offers no quarter, no comfort. He stands back, crossing his arms. He doesn't need many words to scold me. Well, you need to, he says simply, taking on the air of a teacher again, not just for yourself, but for the rest of us. All of us. I don't see how the diary of a dead woman can be any help right now. Well, hopefully. Hopefully you summon the courage to find out. Reading it feels like pushing a stone through mud. Sluggish. Difficult. Foolish. The words pull at me with inky fingers, trying to hold me back. Each page is heavier than the last. Until they aren't. Until the stone is rolling down a hill, and the voice I give my mother rings in my head. speaking as quickly as my mind allows. Sometimes my eyes blur. I don't stop to wipe the tears from the pages, letting them mark the hours as the night passes. Sometimes I find myself smiling. My mother liked to tinker with things, repair and build, just like me. Sometimes I even laugh. The way she talks about Julian, their kind rivalry, how he gave her books she would never read. I can almost trick myself into thinking she's alive, sitting next to me instead of trapped in a book. But mostly, I feel a deep ache, hunger for her, sorrow, regret. My mother had her demons, just like the rest of us. Her own pains that began long before she became a queen, before my father married her and put a target on her back. Her interests grow scarcer as time wears on, as her life changes. There are only a few pages dedicated to me. This is one of the pages of the diary entry I'm reading. I'm just reading what Cal's kind of reading, so it says, "He will not be a soldier. I owe him that much. Too long the sons and daughters of House Calor have been fighting. Too long has this country had a warrior king. Too long have we been at war. On the front and also within. It might be a crime to write such things, but I am a queen. I am the queen. I can say and write what I think. The Calors are children of fire, as strong and destructive as their flame. But Cal will not be like the others before. Fire can destroy. Fire can kill. But it can also create. Fire burned in the summer will green by spring. Better and stronger than before. Cal's flame will build and bring roots from the ashes of war. The guns will quiet, the smoke will clear, and the soldiers, red and silver both, will come home. 100 years of war, and my son will bring peace. He will not die fighting. He will not. He will not." I run a finger over the letters, feeling the press of a faraway pen. This isn't her handwriting, but Julian's. Her real diaries were destroyed by Alara Mirandus. But Julian had the wherewithal to preserve something before they disappeared. He painstakingly copied each letter, even these. He nearly put a hole in the page writing those words. They certainly put a hole through me. Corian Jacobs wanted a different life for her son, entirely separate from how I was raised, and who my father made me into. I have to wonder if there is some fate between what each of my parents wanted from me, a path that is truly my own to choose, or is it simply too late? And that is chapters 29 and 30 of Warstorm. Whew, those were some intense chapters. So we kind of see a little bit from Mare's point of view about they're back in Montfort and everything. She gets to reunite with her family, tell them what's going on, and she tries to get away from the thought of Maven, which I don't blame her for, and meets up with John. If you don't know who John is, back in book 2, I think in Glass Sword, when they were recording New Bloods, what it was John was a new blood, and much like how House Eagery could see like the immediate future, John could see like all possible futures, all kinds of futures and paths that were gone and could not be redone, all that type of stuff. So that's who she was talking to, was John, and apparently he's used to mountain air. And he gave her the piece of advice of the Lakelanders are going to be coming in a few short weeks. You should prepare. And we also found out that apparently John is the reason why all of this started. Literally. Because because if you guys remember, in the very first book, Red Queen, the reason why Lost Love started was because Keylorn, he had Old Cully, who he was an apprentice under. Old Cully was said to have fallen and passed away from that fall. He died. And that's what got Keylorn into conscription and started Mare on everything that happened. But what ended up what it was Old Cully didn't fall. He was pushed. So if you don't understand what had happened, Old Cully, Keylorn's master, I guess is the proper word and everything, if you're talking about like an apprentice and such, Old Cully was pushed. That's literally the catalyst that started everything. Literally. So that's why Mare is where she is now. That's what happened. And of course, John is also the same seer that kind of served Maven for a little bit of time, but then escaped when he had the chance. But, moving on, we're to chapter 30. We get to see Cal's point of view again, which I think, in a weird way, I don't know what happened for a moment there. I did get a little emotional. I think I am a little emotional. I feel it a little bit. I don't know what it is, but I think it's like, I feel like we're seeing, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm thinking differently. I feel like we're seeing a bit more of a sensitive side to Cal. Seeing kind of like, in a way, there's a part of him that's definitely going like, this is supposed to be what I want. This is what I was raised to have. This is supposed to be mine. But why does it feel so horrible? And he kind of even recounts like, I like how he talks about his mom in this. I think maybe talking about his parents is why I'm emotional. But I think it's very, I mean, I totally understand why he misses his father. I mean, the whole situation that happened with his father, it wasn't his fault. It really wasn't. It was Alara's fault. Because she's the one who made him do it. As for his mother, I mean, I can't fully relate to having no mom. Knock on wood, I never experienced that for a very, very long time. But at the same time, I feel so bad for him because it's like he says, there's this ghost trailing him. Like, sure, Maven's mom still haunts his mind, and even we, as, readers, we've read and seen how his mom is still in Maven's mind. But as for Cal's mom, Corianne Jacos, there's only little pieces of her. And there's a part of him he can't bring himself to really look at that and find those pieces of her. And I think, honestly, like, and I totally understand him not being ready for the coronation. I'll come to that in a minute. I think, honestly, if I was him, I mean, like, outside the journal, I would feel like I would have to go find pieces of her. Because I think in certain cases, I can't say it's wrong, but I think in certain cases, when you're missing so many pieces of somebody, it's so hard to find the closure you want sometimes because those pieces are missing. I can't say that for every situation, but I can say it for at least, I think, this situation. And I can't remember if that fully works or not, but I think in the case of Cal, like, and I don't know if, like, what is it, Realmbreaker? So it's somewhere. I think it happened over there, actually, on my bookshelf. But I don't know if, like, Realmbreaker we get to see kind of what happened after that or whatever. But in a general sense, no matter if there's a book about it or not, okay, let me pause a little bit and rewind a little bit. I do have the Cruel Crown thing, which part of the story of it does talk about Corianne Jacos. And I haven't fully read it. I've read a little bit of it, but I haven't finished it. So there's that. I've mentioned it before. We'll come back to that later at a different time. And I do have Realmbreaker, two other Realmbreaker, and the second one after that. Hold on. Bladebreaker, that's the second one. From Victoria Aveyard. She's the one who wrote this series, the Red Queen series. I don't know if there's, like, a thing about, like, Cal eventually kind of looking into those pieces of his mother that maybe he's too worried about going to. And I think it's kind of sucks because we just also found out that some of those pieces of his mother, like the journals, were destroyed by Alara. By Alara Mirandas. Alara Mirandas, if you don't remember, is Maven's mother. She died in book 2? Yeah, book 2, I think. Yeah, she died in Glass Sword. And in a way, I feel so bad for Cal because there's this, like he says, a ghost of someone he never knew. And I don't know what that is about it. I don't know if it's the sensitivity he's showing in this chapter, the way he is thinking. But there's something about it that I feel so sorry for him. And I feel so sorry that there are pieces of him, maybe of his mom, I don't know. I would say, I guess, of him that are missing, that he will never, in a way, no matter how hard he tries, even if he does go look for the other stuff of Corianne, but they're pieces that he will probably never get, let alone get back. And I feel so sorry for him. Because, I mean, he at least knew his father, and I think that's great. But to not know his mom and be haunted by the fact of he will never fully know, outside of the little bit of information he has, it's so saddening to me for some reason. I don't know why. I mean, you know what? I think in a way that kind of shows how well this book was written. Because it's making me want to, like, low-key cry. What the world is this? But yeah, that was chapters 29 and 30 of War Storm by Victoria Aveyard. As I say at the beginning and end, usually a lot of times, War Storm is the 4th and final book in the Red Queen series. If you want to check out the rest of the series, the books in order are Red Queen is the book 1, Glass Sword is book 2, and then, what is it? Oh yeah, King's Cage is book 3. This is book 4. I do admittedly have playlists with me reading the chapters of each book. This is one we're currently working on. You are more than welcome to go check out this playlist. You're more than welcome not to. If you do or don't, that's not up to me. That's up to you guys entirely. But I do hope that at least you are enjoying me read the books, because I am, and this is fun. I do hope, I've mentioned it before, I'm not going to go into huge detail, I'll just briefly re-mention it. Once we get a little closer to the end, I'll kind of bring up like the bonus stuff and everything. Cruel Crown, I mentioned it just a second ago. It is a book where it has 2 different kind of little short stories, I guess, with it. It has Queen Song, which actually is told from the point of view of Corian Jadekos, the first queen. And then we also have Steel Scars in it, which is a bit more Farley's point of view, and all the stuff she was doing in terms of the Scarlet Guard. Broken Throne, I think, has some short stories, but I think it also has like a lot of the history stuff and a bunch of other fun stuff, so we can probably check that out too. Excuse me, yeah. But we'll kind of talk a bit more about that once I get a little closer to the book. We are kind of getting into the, chapter 37 and the epilogues. We got like 8-ish more chapters if you want to include the epilogue. So, yeah, not too long now. So, thank you guys again so much for watching. I hope you all very thoroughly enjoyed. And I will see you all in my next video. Mwah.